Donald Trump. Donald Trump, born in 1946, is an American politician, media personality, and businessman who served as the 45th President of the United States from 2017 to 2021. He received a Bachelor of Science degree in economics from the University of Pennsylvania in 1968 and was president of the family real estate business from 1971 to 2015. Trump's political positions were described as populist, protectionist, and nationalist, sparking numerous protests. Trump won the 2016 presidential election as the Republican Party nominee against Democratic Party candidate Hillary Clinton, but the Mueller Special Counsel investigation found that Russia interfered in the election to favor Trump. His political policies were described as populist, protectionist, and nationalist, with many false and misleading statements made during his campaigns. Trump ordered a travel ban on citizens from several Muslim-majority countries, diverted military funding towards building a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, and implemented a family separation policy. He rolled back over 100 environmental policies and regulations, signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, appointed Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court, and reacted slowly to the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump has been impeached twice, in 2019 for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, and in 2021 for incitement of insurrection. He lost the 2020 presidential election to Biden but refused to concede, falsely claiming widespread electoral fraud and attempting to overturn the results. Since leaving office, Trump has continued to dominate the Republican Party and is their nominee again in the 2024 presidential election. In May 2024, a jury found him guilty on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to a hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Personal life. Born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York City, Trump grew up with his siblings and attended various schools. He attended the Q Forest School from kindergarten through 7th grade and later attended the New York Military Academy. In 1964, he enrolled at Fordham University and later transferred to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Trump obtained 4 student draft deferments during the Vietnam War and was deemed fit for military service in 1966. However, he was reclassified 4F, unfit for military service, due to alleged bone spurs. Trump married Czech model Ivana Zelníková in 1977 and they had 3 children. The couple divorced in 1990, following Trump's affair with actress Marla Maples. They had 1 daughter, Tiffany, who was raised by Maples in California. In 2005, Trump married Slovenian model Melania Naus, and they had 1 son, Baron. Trump has never drunk alcohol, smoked cigarettes, or used drugs. He sleeps about 4 or 5 hours a night and has called golfing his primary form of exercise, but usually does not walk the course. He considers exercise a waste of energy because he believes the body is like a battery with a finite amount of energy, which is depleted by exercise. In 1982, Trump made the initial Forbes list of wealthy people for holding a share of his family's estimated $200 million net worth. His losses in the 1980s dropped him from the list between 1990 and 1995. After filing the mandatory financial disclosure report with the FEC in July 2015, he announced a net worth of about $10 billion. Forbes estimated his net worth dropped by $1.4 billion between 2015 and 2018. Trump has often claimed he began his career with a small loan of $1 million from his father and that he had to pay it back with interest. He was a millionaire by age 8, borrowed at least $60 million from his father, and received another $413 million from his father's company. In 2018, he and his family were reported to have committed tax fraud, and Forbes estimated his net worth declined from $4.5 billion in 2015 to $3.1 billion in 2017. Trump's tax returns from 1985 to 1994 show net losses totaling $1.17 billion, higher than those of almost every other American taxpayer. The New York Times obtained Trump's tax information extending over 2 decades, finding that he reported losses of hundreds of millions of dollars and had deferred declaring $287 million in forgiven debt as taxable income since 2010. Business career. Trump began his career in real estate in 1968, working at his father's company, Trump Management, which owned racially segregated middle-class rental housing in New York City's outer boroughs. In 1971, he became president of the company, and used the Trump Organization as an umbrella brand. Between 1991 and 2009, he filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for 6 of his businesses: the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, the casinos in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and the Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts Company. Trump's first Manhattan venture was the renovation of the derelict Commodore Hotel, which was financed by a $400 million city property tax abatement arranged for Trump by his father. He also obtained rights to develop Trump Tower, a mixed-use skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. In 1988, Trump acquired the Plaza Hotel with a loan from a consortium of 16 banks, which filed for bankruptcy protection in 1992. In 1995, the lenders seized the property, allowing Trump to avoid personal bankruptcy. Trump's last major construction project was the 92-story mixed-use Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago, which opened in 2008. The Internal Revenue Service is investigating whether Trump had twice written off losses incurred through construction cost overruns and lagging sales of residential units in the building. Trump also owned the Atlantic City casinos, Harrah's at Trump Plaza, Atlantic City Hilton Hotel, and Trump Taj Mahal. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 1991, selling the Trump Shuttle airline, mega yacht, and other businesses to reduce his $900 million of personal debt. In 1999, Trump acquired the Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, and converted it into a private club. The Trump Organization began building and buying golf courses in 1999, owning 14 and managing 3 Trump-branded courses worldwide. Trump's side ventures include purchasing the New Jersey Generals in 1983, hosting boxing matches at Atlantic City Convention Hall, and lent his name to the Tour de Trump cycling stage race. He also purchased shares in various public companies, leading some observers to believe he was engaged in greenmail. In 1988, Trump purchased the Eastern Airlines shuttle, financing it with $380 million in loans from a syndicate of 22 banks. Trump defaulted on his loans in 1991, and ownership passed to the banks. In 1992, Trump, his siblings Marianne, Elizabeth, Robert, and his cousin John W. Walter formed All County Building Supply and Maintenance Corp., which was alleged to have been a shell company for paying vendors providing services and supplies for Trump's rental units. The owners shared the proceeds generated by the markups, which were used to get state approval for increasing the rents of Trump's rent-stabilized units. From 1996 to 2015, Trump owned all or part of the Miss Universe pageants, including Miss USA and Miss Teen USA. Due to disagreements with CBS about scheduling, he took both pageants to NBC in 2002. In 2007, Trump received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for his work as producer of Miss Universe. Trump University, a company that sold real estate seminars for up to $35,000. In 2013, the state of New York filed a $40 million civil suit against Trump University, alleging that the company made false statements and defrauded consumers. Shortly after winning the 2016 presidential election, Trump agreed to pay a total of $25 million to settle the 3 cases. The Donald J. Trump Foundation, a private foundation established in 1988, was dissolved in December 2016. In June 2018, the New York Attorney General's office filed a civil suit against the foundation, Trump, and his adult children, seeking $2.8 million in restitution and additional penalties. In November 2019, a New York state judge ordered Trump to pay $2 million to a group of charities for misusing the foundation's funds, in part to finance his presidential campaign. Media career. Trump has produced 19 books under his name, including the New York Times bestseller, The Art of the Deal, 1987. He made a cameo appearance in films and television shows from 1985 to 2001. Trump also guested on Howard Stern's show and had his own talk radio program, Trumped, from 2004 to 2008. From 2011 to 2015, he was a weekly guest commentator on Fox and Friends. From 2004 to 2015, Trump co-produced and hosted reality shows The Apprentice and The Celebrity Apprentice, portraying himself as a successful CEO. These shows earned him over $400 million, which he invested in profitable businesses. In February 2021, Trump resigned from SAG-AFTRA to avoid a disciplinary hearing, and the union permanently barred him from readmission. Political career. Trump's political career began in 1987 with his registration as a Republican, and he later switched to the Democratic Party in 1999. He ran for the 2000 presidential election but withdrew from the race in February 2000. In 2011, Trump speculated about running against President Barack Obama in the 2012 election, but announced he would not run. In 2016, Trump announced his candidacy, which was initially not taken seriously by political analysts. He quickly rose to the top of opinion polls and was declared the presumptive Republican nominee in May. His campaign platform emphasized renegotiating U.S.-China relations, free trade agreements, immigration laws, and building a new wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Trump also advocated for energy independence while opposing climate change regulations, modernizing services for veterans, repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, abolishing Common Core education standards, investing in infrastructure, simplifying the tax code while reducing taxes, and imposing tariffs on imports by companies that offshore jobs. Trump's campaign rhetoric and political positions were right-wing populist, with a random assortment of whatever plays publicly. He described NATO as obsolete and espoused views that were described as non-interventionist and protectionist. His campaign platform included pursuing energy independence while opposing climate change regulations, modernizing services for veterans, repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, abolishing Common Core education standards, investing in infrastructure, simplifying the tax code while reducing taxes, and imposing tariffs on imports by companies that offshore jobs. Trump's financial disclosures were controversial, with his FEC-required reports listing assets above $1.4 billion and outstanding debts of at least $315 million. After a lengthy court battle, the High Court allowed the records to be released to the prosecutor for review by a grand jury in February 2021. Trump's election to the presidency was a political upset, as he received nearly 2.9 million fewer votes than Clinton. He won 30 states, including Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which have been considered a blue wall of Democratic strongholds since the 1990s. Trump's victory marked the return of an undivided Republican government, with protests in major U.S. cities. Presidency, 2017 to 2021. Trump's presidency began with his signing of 6 executive orders, including the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations, reinstatement of the Mexico City policy, and advancement of the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipeline construction projects. Trump's daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner became his assistant and senior advisor respectively. Trump faced conflicts of interest as he moved his businesses into a revocable trust before being inaugurated. He continued to profit from his businesses and knew how his administration's policies affected them. Trump was sued for violating the domestic and foreign emoluments clauses of the U.S. Constitution. But one case was dismissed in lower court, and 2 were dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court as moot after the end of his term. Trump took office at the height of the longest economic expansion in American history, which began in 2009 and continued until February 2020 when the COVID-19 recession began. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 reduced tax rates for businesses and individuals, but 2018 revenues were 7.6% lower than projected. Trump approved large increases in government spending and the 2017 tax cut, leading to an almost 50% increase in the federal budget deficit, reaching nearly $1 trillion in 2019. Trump rejected the scientific consensus on climate change, reduced the budget for renewable energy research by 40%, reversed Obama-era policies directed at curbing climate change, and withdrew from the Paris Agreement. He aimed to boost the production and exports of fossil fuels, rolled back over 100 federal environmental regulations, and expanded permitted areas for drilling and resource extraction. In healthcare, Trump scaled back the Affordable Care Act's implementation through executive orders, having enrollment periods and drastically reducing funding for enrollment promotion. In response to the opioid epidemic, he signed legislation in 2018 to increase funding for drug treatments, but was widely criticized for failing to make a concrete strategy. Trump's administration has faced significant social issues, including the prohibition of abortions and abortion referrals, the rollback of workplace protections against discrimination, and his opposition to gun control. He has also been a longtime advocate of capital punishment, with 13 prisoners executed under his administration. Trump's administration also granted fewer requests for clemency than all presidents since 1900, with only 25 vetted by the Justice Department's Office of the Pardon Attorney. Trump's proposed immigration policies were a topic of bitter debate during the campaign. He promised to build a wall on the Mexico-U.S. border to restrict illegal movement, and vowed that Mexico would pay for it. He pledged to deport millions of illegal immigrants residing in the U.S. and criticized birthright citizenship for incentivizing anchor babies. As president, he frequently described illegal immigration as an invasion and conflated immigrants with the criminal gang MS-13. Trump attempted to drastically escalate immigration enforcement, including implementing harsher immigration enforcement policies against asylum seekers from Central America than any modern U.S. president. From 2018 onward, Trump deployed nearly 6,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border to stop most Central American migrants from seeking asylum. In 2020, his administration widened the public charge rule to further restrict immigrants who might use government benefits from getting permanent residency. Trump proposed to ban Muslim foreigners from entering the U.S. until stronger vetting systems could be implemented. On January 27, 2017, Trump signed Executive Order 13769, which suspended admission of refugees for 120 days and denied entry to citizens of Iraq, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen for 90 days. The temporary order was replaced by Presidential Proclamation 9645 on September 24, 2017, which restricted travel from the originally targeted countries except Iraq and Sudan, and further banned travelers from North Korea and Chad, along with certain Venezuelan officials. The Trump administration separated more than 5,400 children of migrant families from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border, a sharp increase in the number of family separations starting from the summer of 2017. In April 2018, the Trump administration announced a zero-tolerance policy where adults suspected of illegal entry were to be detained and criminally prosecuted while their children were taken away as unaccompanied alien minors. However, Judge Dana Sabraw concluded that the Trump administration had no system in place to keep track of the separated children or effective measures for family communication and reunification. Trump's campaign promises included building a 1,000-mile border wall to Mexico and having Mexico pay for it. However, in 2018, Trump refused to sign any appropriations bill from Congress unless it allocated $5.6 billion for the border wall, resulting in the federal government partially shutting down for 35 days from December 2018 to January 2019. Around 800,000 government employees were furloughed or worked without pay. Trump and Congress ended the shutdown by approving temporary funding that provided delayed payments to government workers but no funds for the wall. The shutdown resulted in an estimated permanent loss of $3 billion to the economy. To prevent another imminent shutdown in February 2019, Congress passed and Trump signed a funding bill that included $1.375 billion for 55 miles of bollard border fencing. He also declared a national emergency on the southern border, intending to divert $6.1 billion of funds Congress had allocated to other purposes. Legal challenges to the diversion of $2.5 billion originally meant for the Department of Defense's drug interdiction efforts and $3.6 billion originally meant for military construction were unsuccessful. Trump described himself as a nationalist and his foreign policy as America first. Hallmarks of foreign relations during Trump's tenure included unpredictability, uncertainty, and inconsistency. Tensions between the U.S. and its European allies were strained under Trump. Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership (TPP) negotiations, imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, and launched a trade war with China. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement (USMCA) became effective in July 2020 as the successor to NAFTA. Trump repeatedly accused China of taking unfair advantage of the U.S., launched a trade war against China, sanctioned Huawei for alleged ties to Iran, and classified China as a currency manipulator. In July 2020, the Trump administration imposed sanctions and visa restrictions against senior Chinese officials in response to expanded mass detention camps holding more than 1 million of the country's Uyghur minority. The Trump administration experienced significant changes during his term, with troop numbers in Afghanistan increasing from 8,500 in January 2017 to 14,000 a year later. In February 2020, the Trump administration signed a peace agreement with the Taliban, which called for the withdrawal of foreign troops in 14 months. By the end of Trump's term, 5,000 Taliban had been released, and U.S. troops had been reduced to 2,500. Trump supported many of the policies of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, including the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. In 2020, the White House hosted the signing of agreements named Abraham Accords between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain to normalize their foreign relations. Trump actively supported the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen against the Houthis and signed a $110 billion agreement to sell arms to Saudi Arabia. Following the 2019 attack on Saudi oil facilities, which the U.S. and Saudi Arabia blamed on Iran, Trump approved the deployment of 3,000 additional U.S. troops to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Trump ordered missile strikes in April 2017 and April 2018 against the Assad regime in Syria, in retaliation for the Khan Sheikhan and Doma chemical attacks, respectively. In December 2018, Trump declared, "We have won against ISIS," contradicting Department of Defense assessments, and ordered the withdrawal of all troops from Syria. In October 2019, after speaking to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, U.S. troops in northern Syria were withdrawn from the area and Turkey invaded northern Syria, attacking and displacing American allied Kurds. The Trump administration had a high turnover of personnel, particularly among White House staff. By the end of Trump's first year in office, 34% of his original staff had resigned, been fired, or been reassigned. Notable early departures included National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Trump also dismissed FBI Director James Comey, losing 3 of his 15 original cabinet members within his first year. He was slow to appoint second-tier officials in the executive branch, saying many of the positions are unnecessary. Trump appointed 226 Article III judges, including 54 to the Courts of Appeals and 3 to the Supreme Court. His Supreme Court nominees were noted for politically shifting the court to the right. Trump disparaged courts and judges he disagreed with, often in personal terms, and questioned the judiciary's constitutional authority. His attacks on the courts drew rebukes from observers, including sitting federal judges, concerned about the effect of his statements on the judicial independence and public confidence in the judiciary. The COVID-19 pandemic began on January 20, 2020, and was officially declared a public health emergency by Health and Human Services, HHS, Secretary Alex Azar on January 31, 2020. Trump initially ignored persistent public health warnings and calls for action from health officials within his administration and Secretary Azar. He focused on economic and political considerations of the outbreak, asserting that the outbreak in the U.S. was less deadly than influenza, was very much under control, and would soon be over. By mid-March, most global financial markets had severely contracted in response to the pandemic. On March 6, Trump signed the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act, which provided $8.3 billion in emergency funding for federal agencies. On March 11, the World Health Organization, WHO, recognized COVID-19 as a pandemic, and Trump announced partial travel restrictions for most of Europe, effective March 13. On March 13, he declared a national emergency, freeing up federal resources. Trump adopted a strategy of blaming the states rather than accepting that his initial assessments of the pandemic were overly optimistic or his failure to provide presidential leadership. The White House Coronavirus Task Force was established on January 29, 2020, and Trump held daily briefings, promoting unproven treatments and blaming the media, Democratic state governors, the previous administration, China, and the WHO. Trump also criticized the WHO and other international bodies, accusing them of taking advantage of U.S. aid. In July 2020, Trump announced the formal withdrawal of the U.S. from the WHO, effective July 2021. Pressure to abandon pandemic mitigation measures was also exerted by Republican-connected groups organizing anti-lockdown protests against state governments' measures to combat the pandemic. Trump often refused to mask at public events, contrary to his administration's April 2020 guidance to wear masks in public. Trump's administration faced political pressure on health agencies, including the CDC, to approve unproven treatments or speed up vaccine approvals. Trump's administration political appointees at HHS sought to control CDC communications, which undermined Trump's claims that the pandemic was under control. Trump alleged that FDA scientists were part of a deep state, opposing him and delaying vaccine approval to hurt him politically. Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic became a major issue in the 2020 presidential campaign, with polls suggesting voters blamed Trump for his pandemic response and disbelieved his rhetoric. In the final months of the campaign, Trump repeatedly said that the U.S. was rounding the turn in managing the pandemic despite increasing cases and deaths. After assuming office, Trump faced increasing Justice Department and congressional scrutiny, with investigations covering his election campaign, transition, inauguration, actions taken during his presidency, private businesses, personal taxes, and charitable foundation. There were 10 federal criminal investigations, 8 state and local investigations, and 12 congressional investigations. Russian election interference was also a concern, with American intelligence agencies stating with high confidence that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election to favor Trump's election. The FBI launched an investigation into possible links between Russia and the Trump campaign in July 2016, which was transferred to the Mueller investigation. However, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein ended the investigation into Trump's direct ties to Russia, while giving the Bureau the false impression that the Robert Mueller Special Counsel investigation would pursue the matter. In May 2017, former FBI Director Mueller was appointed Special Counsel for the Department of Justice, DOJ, by President Rosenstein to investigate any links or coordination between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. The special counsel focused on criminal matters related to Russia's 2016 election interference, including Trump's dismissal of James Comey as FBI director and the Trump campaign's possible ties to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Qatar, Israel, and China. Trump sought to fire Mueller and shut down the investigation multiple times, but backed down after his staff objected or changed his mind. In March 2019, Mueller gave his final report to Attorney General William Barr, which was mischaracterized by a federal court and Mueller himself. The report found that Russia interfered in 2016 to favor Trump, but did not establish that Trump campaign members conspired or coordinated with Russian interference. The report also detailed multiple acts of potential obstruction of justice by Trump but did not draw ultimate conclusions about his conduct. The House of Representatives launched an impeachment inquiry following the Trump-Ukraine scandal, but did not pursue an article of impeachment related to the Mueller investigation. Several Trump associates pleaded guilty or were convicted in connection with Mueller's investigation and related cases, including Manafort and Flynn. Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about Trump's 2016 attempts to reach a deal with Russia to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. In August 2019, a whistleblower filed a complaint with the Inspector General of the intelligence community about a July 25 phone call between Trump and President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, during which Trump had pressured Zelensky to investigate CrowdStrike and Democratic presidential candidate Biden and his son Hunter. The House Judiciary Committee voted along party lines to pass 2 articles of impeachment, and the House of Representatives impeached Trump on both articles on December 18. In the 2020 presidential campaign, Trump filed for a second term within hours of taking office and held his first re-election rally less than a month after taking office. He raised $67.5 million in his first 2 years in office and officially became the Republican nominee in August 2020. However, by July 2020, the Trump campaign and the Republican Party had raised $1.1 billion and spent $800 million, losing their cash advantage over Biden. Trump campaign advertisements focused on crime, claiming that cities would descend into lawlessness if Biden won, and repeatedly misrepresented Biden's positions and shifted to appeals to racism. In the 2020 presidential election, Trump began to sow doubts about the election, claiming without evidence that the election would be rigged and that the expected widespread use of mail balloting would produce massive election fraud. When the House of Representatives voted for a $25 billion grant to the U.S. Postal Service for the expected surge in mail voting, Trump blocked funding, saying he wanted to prevent any increase in voting by mail. He repeatedly refused to say whether he would accept the results if he lost, and committed to a peaceful transition of power. Biden won the election on November 3rd, receiving 81.3 million votes, 51.3%, to Trump's 74.2 million, 46.8%. After the election, Trump declared victory and baselessly alleged election fraud. He and his allies filed many legal challenges to the results, which were rejected by at least 86 judges in both the state and federal courts, including by federal judges appointed by Trump himself. Trump withdrew from public activities in the weeks following the election, initially blocking government officials from cooperating in Biden's presidential transition. From November to January, Trump repeatedly sought help to overturn the results, personally pressuring Republican local and state office holders, Republican state and federal legislators, the Justice Department, and Vice President Pence. On February 10, 2021, Georgia prosecutors opened a criminal investigation into Trump's efforts to subvert the election in Georgia. Post-Presidency, 2021 present. After his term ended, Trump established an office at his Mar-a-Lago club and continued to dominate his party, raising more than twice as much as the Republican Party itself. He focused on how elections are run and ousted election officials who had resisted his attempts to overturn the 2020 election results. In the 2022 midterm elections, Trump endorsed over 200 candidates for various offices, most of whom supported his false claim that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him. Trump registered a new company, Trump Media and Technology Group, TMTG, for providing social networking services to U.S. customers. In March 2024, TMTG merged with special purpose acquisition company Digital World Acquisition and became a public company. In February 2022, TMTG launched Truth Social, a social media platform. As of March 2023, Trump Media, which had taken $8 million from Russia-connected entities, was being investigated by federal prosecutors for possible money laundering. Trump is the only U.S. president or former president to be convicted of a crime and the first major party candidate to run for president after a felony conviction. He faces numerous criminal charges and civil cases. In December 2022, the Trump Organization was convicted on 17 counts of criminal tax fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying business records in connection with a tax fraud scheme stretching over 15 years. In June 2023, a federal grand jury in Miami indicted Trump on 31 counts of willfully retaining national defense information under the Espionage Act, 1 count of making false statements, and 1 count each of conspiracy to obstruct justice, withholding government documents, corruptly concealing records, and concealing a document in a federal investigation. On August 1, 2023, a Washington, D.C. federal grand jury indicted Trump for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. He was charged with conspiring to defraud the U.S., obstructing the certification of the Electoral College vote, and depriving voters of the civil right to have their votes counted. In the 2016 campaign, American Media Incorporated AMI, and a company set up by Cohen paid Playboy model Karen McDougal and adult film actress Stormy Daniels for keeping silent about their alleged affairs with Trump between 2006 and 2007. Cohen pleaded guilty in 2018 to breaking campaign finance laws, saying he had arranged both payments at Trump's direction to influence the presidential election. Trump denied the affairs and said he was not aware of Cohen's payment to Daniels, but he reimbursed him in 2017. Federal prosecutors asserted that Trump had been involved in discussions regarding non-disclosure payments as early as 2014. Court documents show that the FBI believed Trump was directly involved in the payment to Daniels, based on calls he had with Cohen in October 2016. Federal prosecutors closed the investigation in 2019, but in 2021, the New York State Attorney General's office and Manhattan District Attorney's office opened a criminal investigation into Trump's business activities. The Manhattan DA's office subpoenaed the Trump Organization and AMI for records related to the payments and Trump and the Trump Organization for 8 years of tax returns. In March 2023, a New York grand jury indicted Trump on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to book the hush money payments to Daniels as business expenses, in an attempt to influence the 2016 election. The trial began in April 2024, and in May a jury convicted Trump on all 34 counts. Sentencing is set for November 26, 2024. Civil judgments against Trump include a civil fraud case against Trump, his 3 oldest children, and the Trump Organization, and a federal lawsuit brought by journalist Jean Carroll in 2022. Trump appealed both decisions and posted a $91.6 million bond. During the 2024 presidential campaign, Trump made increasingly violent and authoritarian statements, using harsher, more dehumanizing anti-immigrant rhetoric than during his presidency. He intensified his "heads I win, tails you cheated" rhetorical strategy during the campaign. Public image. Trump has been ranked as the fourth worst president in American history by various scholars and public approval surveys. He was the only president never to reach a 50% approval rating in the Gallup poll, which dates back to 1938. His approval ratings showed a record-high partisan gap, with 88% among Republicans and 7% among Democrats. Trump finished his term with an approval rating between 29 and 34%, the lowest of any president since modern polling began. Trump's false statements became a distinctive part of his political identity, with fact-checkers documenting 30,573 false or misleading statements made by Trump over his four-year term. These falsehoods increased in frequency over time, rising from about 6 false or misleading claims per day in his first year as president to 39 per day in his final year. Some of Trump's falsehoods were inconsequential, such as his repeated claim of the biggest inaugural crowd ever. Others had more far-reaching effects, such as his promotion of anti-malarial drugs as an unproven treatment for COVID-19, causing a U.S. shortage of these drugs and panic buying in Africa and South Asia. Trump was a significant source of disinformation on mail-in voting and the COVID-19 pandemic, weakened public faith in the integrity of the 2020 presidential election. His attacks on mail-in ballots and other election practices weakened public faith in the integrity of the 2020 presidential election. Research suggests Trump's rhetoric caused an increased incidence of hate crimes, with numerous defendants investigated or prosecuted for violent acts and hate crimes, including participants in the January 6, 2021, storming of the U.S. Capitol. A nationwide review by ABC News identified at least 54 criminal cases from August 2015 to April 2020 in which Trump was invoked in direct connection with violence or threats of violence, mostly by white men and primarily against minorities. Trump's social media presence attracted worldwide attention after joining Twitter in 2009. He tweeted frequently during his 2016 campaign and as president until Twitter banned him after the January 6 attack in the final days of his term. The loss of his social media presence diminished his ability to shape events and prompted a dramatic decrease in the volume of misinformation shared on Twitter. Trump's early attempts to re-establish a social media presence were unsuccessful, but Elon Musk reinstated his Twitter account in November 2022. Meta Platform's 2-year ban lapsed in January 2023, allowing Trump to return to Facebook and Instagram, although in 2024, Trump continued to call the company an enemy of the people. Trump has a love-hate relationship with the press throughout his career, often accusing it of bias and discrediting the media. His administration has attempted to revoking the press credentials of journalists he viewed as critical, leading to a decline in formal press briefings. Trump also used the legal system to intimidate the press, with lawsuits against the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN for defamation and opinion pieces about Russian election interference dismissed. Racial views have been a significant factor in Trump's political ascent, with studies showing that racist attitudes fueled his political ascent and were more important than economic factors in determining the allegiance of Trump voters. Trump has been accused of racism for settlement in a 1973 Department of Justice lawsuit and for insisting a group of Black and Latino teenagers were guilty of raping a white woman in the 1989 Central Park jogger case. In 2011, he became the leading proponent of the racist birther conspiracy theory, alleging that Barack Obama was not born in the U.S. He later acknowledged that Obama was born in the U.S. in 2017 and continued to make racist appeals to whites during his 2016 presidential campaign. Trump has also been accused of misogyny and allegations of sexual misconduct, with at least 26 women publicly accusing him of rape, kissing, and groping without consent. A 2005 hot mic recording surfaced in which Trump was heard bragging about kissing and groping women without their consent, leading to his first public apology during the campaign and causing outrage across the political spectrum. In popular culture, Trump has been the subject of comedy and caricature on television, films, and comics, with most of these casting him in a positive light before he began running for office. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.